Bro, it is windy as hell out here, but yeah, we caught 41.5 pounds, dude. And in this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how, and I bet you're thinking right off the bat, you're like, he's dangling a minnow, he's throwing the Sakamata. Oh no, my friend, I've caught some great big ones this year, dude, including like a 12, a couple 11s, freaking doing that dangle deal, you know, for pre-spawn and staging fish. But I wanted to play with something different. So I was laying in bed the other night and I'm like, how can I present something that's like kind of like OG, but at the same time kind of mod it and tweak it so it fits kind of some of these forward facing, as well as just kind of like these new school kind of like power finesse techniques that we've been playing around with a lot. And I came up with an idea. So what I'm gonna do in this video is I'm gonna show you how to build this custom finesse but power jig that's kind of unique, and it sort of makes me rethink jig fishing a little bit. And I'm gonna show you 41.5 pounds. So some epic mega bags, as well as this cool OG lure mod that I think is gonna really help you, whether you're fishing the bank or you're fishing with forward facing. This is the way I imagine jig fishing now. So hit that like and subscribe button. Let's get after it, boys. So you guys that watch the channel a lot know I always carry this with me. And in a Bass Mafia bag, I have a Skirts Unlimited skirt kit, as well as a bunch of supplemental like skirt materials. And it's basically for this situation precisely. I get out on a lake that's got dirty water, brown water, green water, gin clear, whatever. I can make a skirt in either like a shad or a baitfish color or a darker color to accommodate whatever conditions I have, and it takes like 2 minutes. And I ran into that situation. I'm like, you know what? I want to make a jig that I can fish kind of on forward facing, but I can also drag, but it needs to be modded a little. So one of the first things that I grabbed are these Boss. This is actually like a ball head, but it's kind of unique because it's a finesse ball head, so it's got a shorter shank hook, but it's got all the stoutness of like a hack attack flipping hook, dude. We're dealing with big fish in Florida. I want that stout hook. So it's got like a meaty, like 2/0 or 3/0 smaller hook. Not very good for like super thick wood, but for hard bottom, hard spots, and kind of that unique ball head fall. Perfect, right? So I'm gonna mod this thing right off the bat, and one of the things that I'm gonna do, we're using this jig in more open water situations. There might be some shell spots, there might be some sticks around, but it's definitely like open water. You don't wanna miss hookups. I'd rather lose the jig than miss the hookup. So what I actually do is I take this skirt and I flare it out. This is one of the things that you should do with all your jigs anyways, is flare this skirt out just like this, so you get better hook coverage. But then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pinch it back and I'm gonna bend some of this brush guard back just like that. And I'm gonna take a scissors and I'm gonna go down that, and I'm literally gonna clip it. I basically want it to have just a few strands, but not too much. It's very comparable to like that Nichols JT Kenny Magnet that just has a couple strands for a brush guard. The other thing that I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna 45 that just a little, just like that. Once again, thinning it and shortening that brush guard ever so slightly. I want to be able to get through like a stick, maybe a little grass, stuff like that, but I don't want it to inhibit a hookup. So I'm gonna grab this skirt making kit, and what I've done already is I put one of these Boss O-rings. If you're ever doing this jig stuff, skip the little collared skirts, they're crap. I'll put links to all this stuff at Tackle Warehouse and Monster Bass as well. Usually I'd put 3 layers of skirt material into my jigs. In this situation, I'm just gonna do 2. I'm choosing the colors to kind of mimic both brim as well as shad. I want it to be kind of a dual purpose bait fish, pan fish kind of mimic. And the best colors for that are 1, Magic Craw, you know, Skirts Unlimited Magic Craw. You can't beat it. It's one of the most universal colors. I use it almost more than green pumpkin when it's available. And then I have 2 different ones. I would call this like that pearl red Kitech color. It looks like it's white, but it's fairly transparent, and it's got a little like red pink flash to it. And then the other one, and this is the one I'm gonna use in this skirt, is once again kind of like a pearl flash, but it's actually fairly transparent, and it has this ever so slight like blue iridescent feel. Perfect for mimicking like a dual purpose like bait fish brim kind of deal. The trick here is I'm only using 2 because a little less skirt material is gonna cause that jig to fall a little better. If I wanted a slower fall, I'd go up to 3 layers or maybe even 4 in some situations. So I'm gonna drop this little hook. They give you a little kind of like hook with that tube. And basically I'm gonna draw this skirt material through that tube and then drop that O-ring on it just like this. Ever so slowly, there we go. And then you draw it out and you have your skirt already made. Now what I actually do is before you trim those tabs off of there, there's a tab on each side of that skirt material, I actually go ahead and put it on the jig. I find it controls a little better. And all you're gonna do, it's almost like hooking a soft plastic, is you're gonna run that hook through. There's a small collar on that jig right there, and you're going to run it up to that collar and roll it right over the collar, just like that. So we're pretty set. Looks a mess, but I promise you it's gonna come out a lot better than this. So now I'm gonna start my trimming. What I wanna do right off the bat is just trim off those tabs. So boom, and I'm gonna do it on the bottom side too. Poor Fireballs is gonna be a mess, dude. And you get what I guess you'd describe as, you know, your standard like jig skirt kind of, you know, it's all over the place, it's big and fluffy and all that. It's a little bit thinner, obviously, because we're only using those two kind of sheets of skirt material. But what I want to do now is I want to trim down the top. I'm not going to go like full finesse jig, but I'm just going to trim it down ever so slightly so it pops out, and then I'll do some random trims, you know, so you kind of have a little bit of unevenness on that top. And then the bottom's the most important. I want this thing, I want a finesse jig, right? I don't want the hook to be way up in the skirt material. Like I want these fish to really focus on the trailer that I'm gonna put on there, and it's not gonna be much longer than that hook. These fish are super finicky, super spooky, and I also don't wanna put a big bulky trailer on because I want this thing to fall pretty straight with just a little bit of I guess, stroll to it. So I'm actually gonna trim the bottom of this skirt almost to the hook, if not to the hook. And then I'm gonna 45 a little bit of the side material so it has a little bit of a kind of a roundness to the way the skirt material sets up on the hook. I think that's about good. So basically what you end up with is, I guess for lack of a better word, it's just a small finesse ball head with, I don't know, a fairly sparse skirt. There's enough to make it flare, there's enough to give it some coloration and bulk, but it's not so fluffy that it's really gonna slow that fall of that jig. If you guys fish a lot of jigs, you know, like a 1/2 ounce jig is like equivalent to a 3/8 ounce Texas rig. The jigs fall slower, and a lot of that has to do with one trailer, but also that skirt that's on there. It causes a different fall. That's why you get that cool undulating action. I want to cut that down a little bit. It's still going to fall a little slower than a Texas rig, but not quite as slow as a standard jig. So I think I'm looking pretty good here. So the art of this is I'm able to get a super stout hook. I have a finesse downsized presentation. I've reduced the size and the thickness of that brush guard, which is going to increase my hookups. And I got myself like kind of a cool finesse jig. The last step that I'm going to do, I'm going to actually show you the finished product and what I've been using. So I'm going to take, instead of your craw trailers, your creature trailers, all those kinds of things, they provide a lot of bulk and they like slow the fall and you get a bunch of kicking action. Well, these fish are kind of pre-spawn, they're pressured, and I'm looking for a bait that's gonna glide and get down to the bottom more so than do all this kicking and undulating. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm putting a Gambler Power Ned little stick bait on the back. And I think you can do this with anything, you know, a little Ned bait. Hell, you could probably even do it with like a little minnow bait. You could cut up like a stick bait, like a chunk. You're almost making like a skirted Ned jig, but much more heavy duty and with a faster fall. And then what I was doing with it is really simple. Like I've been fishing a lot of these fish with a spinning rod, maybe a Kitech, maybe a minnow bait, maybe a Sakamata, you know, finesse stuff, a Nico rig. And I really wanted a way that I can actually put the juice to these fish a little bit more. So there's really two ways I was fishing it. One is almost like straightforward facing, right? So I'm actually dropping the jig to them. It's almost like modified flipping and pitching. I was literally taking this thing and pitching it out to targets that I would see on my forward facing, much like I did with the drop shot quite a few years ago on Smith Lake. And you pitch it out, and you're not letting it fall directly, you're using a semi-taut line and letting that jig sort of pendulum down and then get all the way down, falling through the fish And usually in an ideal situation, and that's what happened when we caught the 41, is those fish will follow it to the bottom. And then once it gets to the bottom, you're trying to basically keep that bait in place, but move it. So you're kind of shaking your rod tip and shaking a slack line to give this bait a little bit of like rocking up and down action. And that's where that ball head, you could probably do this with a finesse football head too, but I want that stouter hook. But that ball head will just kind of roll back and forth, kicking that tail up and causing that Ned tail to do exactly what it's doing right now, to jiggle without moving forward. And that was kind of the art. You want to grab their attention, draw them down, shake that thing, keep them interested, and then hopefully get them to close the deal. The other thing I was doing is I would actually make little kind of like short casts with this thing onto hard spots. And the beauty of this jig really is on hard spots. Like I said, it's not built really for wood. You can fish it through some sparse vegetation and some sparse wood, but this head is not designed for dragging through like Texas style crazy like brush, you know, tree falls on the bank. But it does excellent when it comes to hard bottom, you know, freaking shell bars, a little bit of like rubble rock, like pea gravel and stuff. Ball heads are sick for that. It's just like a shaky head, right? So I would actually throw it out and dude, it was so slow. You're just inching it along, barely moving it, giving it a few like little shakes and pops. I'd even use like this little rod trick that I do where you're actually like casting it out and you would hit kind of like the heart of the rod right there, and it causes that bait to jump up without kind of moving forward. It just hops the bait. So you hit the rod, the bait jumps up, but it doesn't actually move forward. It just jumps straight up. And it was all about fishing ultra slow and inching it along. Some of the bites I got were thumps, right? Like they just freaking smoked it. But most of like the bigger fish bites, it was really important to have, so this is a 7.2 medium heavy, it's got quite a bit of tip to it. It was important to use that tip, especially since we're running straight fluorocarbon. It's not braid where you have that no stretch situation and you can really, really feel when it's starting to load up. You had to be ever so soft and just feel that tension loading up and then watch your line. And if your line started walking, she was on there. And then reeling down, you're gonna notice in some of the videos, I probably didn't reel down far enough because they were already swimming away with it, so I'm trying to catch up with them, but reeling down and really finding that fish and then putting the juice to them. And that's also where that brush guard deal helps. If you don't cut down that brush guard, you're gonna miss a lot more fish. And that's the whole trick. I'd rather lose the jig and not miss the fish than freaking get the jig back and miss a 9, 10, 11, 12 pounder. So that's kind of the art of it, dude. It had a lot to do with like shaking, almost fishing it like a Ned or a shaky head, the finesse style jig, and then either using the forward facing to actually drop on these fish, showing them something different. They're used to seeing all these minnows, all these sakamatas, all this stuff over their head, actually going down past them, drawing them to the bottom versus drawing them up. Dude, it was amazing how differently they reacted. Or we're just going traditional, you know, focusing on those hard spots that they use for pre-spawn, staging, things along those lines, and you're just bumping this jig along ever so slowly, making very short, precise casts, dragging and focusing on where that structure is and seeing if they're laying down there so tight you can't even see them. And bruh, they smoked it. 41.5, dude, on a bait caster, just laying the meat to them. So check this thing out. I'll put links to everything down in the description box for you guys to check out. But check out this mega bag, dude. It was a blast to catch. Another honker. This one is freaking tall, dude. He's got the mouth of a dolphin. I think he's only coming around like 8 or 9 pounds. Let's see. 9.17. What a beautiful fish. This jig's kind of hot. Look at that time. Oh God. All right, homies, we have 37.25 on 5 fish. Our smallest one is 5.57, mostly on that little jig. If we can call it that 5.57 with like a 9, I think we're gonna break 40. So let's find out. Holy crap, this is a big one, dude. She's freaking round, square, and fat as can be, dude. All right, let's see what we got. Please break 40. Please break 40. I think we're gonna do it. That fish is 9.87, 41.5 on the old jigster. Let's get her back. Thank you, honey. You have awesome shoulders, and you did not like my jig. 40 banger on the jigster, boys.